Hello. So in this video, we're going to do a performance review of Sonnetfest 21, which is a production done by Loyola Marymount University, their Theatre of Communications and Fine Arts, and it was a show directed by Kevin Wetmore. Down below, so I watched this via YouTube because I live on the other side of the country from Los Angeles. So down below in the description, I'm going to put a link to the video of the production, which hopefully will work. When last I looked at the video from the live stream, it was unlisted. I don't know if that's going to affect whether or not you all will be able to see it, but there will be a link down below. As well as a link to the Loyola Marymount University Communication and Fine Arts Department YouTube page. So, Sonnetfest is an interesting approach to the poetry of Shakespeare as performance. So, I'll talk a little bit more about what sonnets actually are, what Shakespeare's sonnets actually are, but essentially they're short poems. That's the prelude. And what Sonnetfest did that's really interesting is they presented the poems, as the introduction to the show explained, they presented the poems as 14-line plays. So that's a really unique approach to the sonnets, because a lot of time, most of the sonnets are part of a sonnet sequence, so they have a dramatic arc. There's a narrative arc to the whole thing. But for this show, they took the sonnets as individual pieces and dramatized them. And I'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But I want to briefly talk through what a sonnet is and why they're significant. So the term sonnet comes, I think, from the Italian, and it means, or it evokes something like little love song. So these are short 14-line poems. They have a fixed length, they have a fixed meter, which is iambic pentameter, meaning that each line has 5 metrical feet. That's what pentameter means. Penta meaning 5, meter meaning meter. I'm not sure, actually. But pentameter means that a line has 5 metrical feet. And a metrical foot is a set of stressed and unstressed syllables in a specific pattern. In this case, iambic. An iambic means that you have a metrical foot with 2 stressed syllables, with 2 syllables. The first one unstressed, then stressed. So that's basically what you need to know in terms of the meter of sonnets. You have 5. Each line will have 10 syllables in an unstressed, stressed pattern, broken up into 5 feet of unstressed, stressed. You also have a set rhyme scheme with sonnets. The English sonnet, or Elizabethan sonnet, or Shakespearean sonnet has a rhyme scheme of A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. So you have 4 what are called couplet, or 4 quatrains. Sorry. You have 4 quatrains, each with a 1-2-1-2 type rhyming, type end rhyme. Sorry, 3 quatrains. I think I said 4. You have 3 quatrains. A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F. Then you have a final couplet, G, G. That's not universally used by English Renaissance era sonneteers, but it's very, very common, and it's the most common form that Shakespeare uses, which is part of the reason that they are often called Shakespearean sonnets. And in different places, there were different meters for sonnets. The other big one being the Petrarchan sonnet, which has a different rhyme scheme. But that's what Sonnetfest 21 was working with. The other thing, generally, the sonnets, Shakespeare sonnets, he wrote 154 of them as part of his sonnet sequence. And the sequence part is slightly contentious because there is some disagreement about the order in which these poems were written. But basically, there's a sort of arc of the poet persona speaking primarily to the fair youth and the dark lady. And generally these are poems about love, although they may only deal with love sort of tangentially. The main thematic focus may appear to be something like death or art or nature or something like this. But generally these themes always connect back to love and the poet persona's feelings for these two beloveds. That's what we often refer to it as when talking about poetry, is the beloved. Either the fair youth or the dark lady. So this is the material that the performers of Sonnetfest 21 were working with, is these short poems that they then drew out performances of. And there was a wide range of performance approaches. I mean, the creativity that went into this production was really, really impressive. You had one performer early on who used a sonnet basically to send the message from Los Angeles to her aunt in Australia that she was thinking about her. You had a performance in which a character basically texted the sonnet, alternating between trying to go to sleep and waking up to text, because they couldn't fall asleep because of thinking about the beloved. You had one that was addressed to the band Kiss. You had one in which a character is stalking her ex's Facebook. So they had these really distinct. One was in front of a very large shelf of Edgar Allan Poe books, and all of these sonnets connected in some way to that performance. So in the Poe one, for instance, it's a very sort of creepy sonnet that's obsessed with death. And you have that Edgar Allan Poe background. In a house, domestic setting, a small child. I think we're supposed to read it as a daughter. If it's not, it's not. I don't know. That's how I read it. But I mean, it clearly shifts that relationship from a wedding vows, we'll be together forever, etc., type message to you are my child, and I'm devoted to you in a maternal way. It's a reimagining of the poem, and again, it does it in this very subtle way, because for most of that performance, we actually don't see the daughter. It's really only in the last few seconds when we see the daughter. Another one that really struck me is Sonnet 18, which is the "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day" sonnet. And this, the redefinition, the rethinking of what the poem means, was even more radical, because we went from a love poem, one that's about immortalizing the beloved, one that's about the memory of the beloved lasting forever, lasting until the end of time. We go from that to a commentary on climate change driven wildfires in California, which of course for these performers who live in LA, or I think mostly live in LA, that's an immediate concern. But the performance began by holding up a newspaper article about the California wildfires tied to climate change. And so it shifts. I mean, the last couple of lines of that sonnet, I think this is right. I haven't read it in a long time. It's "So long as men should live and eyes can see, so long lives this, and thus so long lives thee." Something like that. I know that's not exactly right, but that's the sentiment. Basically, as long as there are people around to read the praise of you, of the beloved, then you will not have died. That's the sentiment of Sonnet 18. But when it becomes about ecological catastrophe, about the climate crisis, the focus shifts in a very interesting way. It's no longer "you will be remembered forever through art, through my putting down on paper your qualities." It's the infamy of this moment, the infamy of our failure to deal with the climate crisis will be an eternal source of shame as long as human memory endures. So again, this is a really interesting show. And part of the reason that it's so incredibly interesting is because of the creativity and the unique approach that not only to the sonnets themselves in terms of treating them as performance texts to be acted as very short plays, but also in the creativity with which these performers read the poem.